All right, welcome back to Inside College Basketball Now with Jon Rothstein. Pleased to be joined by USC head coach Eric Musselman. And welcome. This is year 11 for you as a college head coach. How much has the job changed in those 11 years?
Oh wow, a lot. Just the way you build the team has changed drastically, and trying to have a culture year after year, becomes a challenge for all of us in all sports. So it's the landscape has definitely changed a lot.
How is being the head coach at USC different than being the head coach at Arkansas and being the head coach at Nevada?
Yeah, no, I think each job has its own, different aspects to it, and obviously, Nevada it was super close to our Bay Area home. So from a personal standpoint, it allowed me to watch my two sons
Right.
play high school games, and but it's a really good basketball job. I mean, Nevada, whether Mark Fox was there or Sonny Allen, there's great coaches that have coached at Nevada, and that building when you win sells out. And then the same thing in Arkansas. Arkansas is a basketball job. Nevada's
Right.
a basketball job. My family loved living in Fayetteville. We had a lot of success there, winning and meeting friends off the floor and lifetime friends actually in Arkansas. And then USC. It's an unbelievable institution academically. And it's a place that the brand carries a lot of weight nationally.
Yep.
And then personally, close to family and friends. So all three jobs, I feel lucky to coach at all three, places that I've had an opportunity.
Now, you went to college basketball in 2012 as an assistant coach at Arizona State. How hard was it for you to be somebody else's assistant when previously you were the head coach at two NBA franchises?
Yeah, John, it was I knew what I didn't know. Like I didn't know much about college. I needed to learn how to recruit. I didn't even know anything about scheduling. I had no clue,
Right.
when you're in the professional ranks and you kind of grow up in that lifestyle, everything was new. And I learned a lot of strategic things about the college game from Herb Sendek in those 2 years. But it was a humbling experience too. I mean, you know, felt like I was capable to coach a college team, but didn't
Right.
know the landscape. And then got the 2 years there, and then the year with Johnny Jones, and both Coach Sendek and Coach Jones really helped prepare me for the Nevada job.
What drew you to college after being an NBA lifer for so long?
Wow, I think that that when I got offered the LSU assistant job, I was also offered at the same time to go to Minnesota with the Timberwolves and Flip Saunders. Flip had played for my father. Flip and I
Okay.
worked together in the old CBA. And it was really a family decision, John, mainly driven by my wife, Danielle. She had felt like we had given 2 years at Arizona State. And why not go to LSU and learn about the SEC and see what it's really like to recruit at the elitist level, meaning,
Right.
there's just so much competition recruiting in the SEC. And I, you know, if it wasn't for Danielle, I probably would have gone, to Minnesota. My dad was the first coach of the Timberwolves, and I had been an assistant there before. So that was kind of a life altering career decision. That I'm thankful that Danielle, was the one that was bought into the college to give it a try.
What are the biggest things you learned as an assistant coach at LSU and Arizona State that you didn't know prior?
Well, I think the first thing, John, is when you come from the NBA, like little things like side out of bounds from a strategic standpoint are super important.
Yeah.
In college, it's a baseline out, and I would have not known that from just watching casually college games on TV. So I think from an X and O standpoint, Coach Sendek really prepared me for what the strategic side, not being able to advance the ball, those little things, late game situations. And then Coach Jones continued with the schematic standpoint. I learned a lot from him on fundamentals, but Coach Jones also is like a player's coach. He's like the players love playing for him. He's a great recruiter. So I learned strategy from both, and Coach Jones, just because we were recruiting at the time, Ben Simmons, I learned a lot. What it was like to try to recruit and land, a 5-star player that was going to be a lottery pick. So a lot of great learning lessons from both coaches.
So you get really the download on all those little intricacies. I'm curious, how different were you as a head coach in your first game at Nevada versus the last game you coached in the NBA?
I think a lot different. One, you just kind of grow and you mature. I was, my opportunities in the NBA, John, I was so young. I was both of them, before I was 40 years old, basically. And so I think you mature and then you grow being around other coaches, and you see the landscape. And then the way that with college kids, there's so much more teaching that goes on. At the NBA level, it's much more of a partnership. Although I do believe that college is now turning into much more of a partnership with your players than it was
Yeah.
10 years ago. So, but yeah, I was a much different coach. I feel strategy wise, I feel like I got better through time and from a maturity standpoint as well.
Now, when you were at Nevada, you were still a heavy transfer guy, a heavy redshirt guy. You wanted to have as old a team as possible. What was the genesis behind that?
Well, I think coming from the NBA and understanding what a free agent looks like and what a draft pick looks like, and sometimes how it takes a longer time process for a first round draft pick to become a rotation player and then become a star. And at Nevada, one of the things that their athletic director Doug Newth and I talked about was trying to win quickly and not build for 3 or 4 years out. But that Nevada team really, Lindsey Drew was an incoming freshman who had committed to Arizona State. Cam Oliver was an Oregon State commit. Both those guys ended up flipping and coming to as incoming freshmen, and then we sprinkled them in with some great transfers. And
Yeah,
I also thought, John, that you didn't need to have a lot of depth in college, and so we
sure.
always had 4 players sitting out. Whether it was the Martin twins, Kendall Stevens, Hallis Cook, just a lot of really, really good players sitting out so that next year, we had veterans that had been part of our system.
Now, you had great success at Nevada. You took the Arkansas job, as you mentioned. You had great success there. Back-to-back Elite Eights in the NCAA tournament in 21 and 22. Doing this as long as I have, coaches have always said that losing in the Elite Eight is the toughest loss that you'll have as a coach because you are on the cusp of an exclusive club. In all the years you've coached, is taking the defeats in the Elite Eight the toughest losses you've had?
Yeah, I would say for sure, John. I mean, and when you lose, and then when you lose to the eventual, national championship, which we did one year to Baylor, it does sting. You're thinking, what if I just had it? What if we as a group had a different matchup? Or,
Right.
you look back at possessions and, calls and all those things, you can, but I also think once you get to a Sweet 16, an Elite Eight, I also, you understand that there was some luck involved. There was, maybe you remained injury free. There's a whole bunch of stuff that goes into it that I do feel when you get to that point, you're also, you got to feel like your team and your group was blessed as well to get as far as it did, because you get in that tournament, you get the right matchup, that helps you. Get the wrong matchup, it can be hard to overcome. So, but the winning in the NCAA tournament, I don't think I've ever had a greater high than winning a game in the NCAA tournament. It's the greatest feeling that I think a coach or a player can ever have.
Well, another high you could get is going outside your door and walking on the Pacific Ocean, because I know you do that on a regular basis. Has returning to the West Coast to take a job like USC something that's always been in the back of your basketball mind when you weren't living on the West Coast and coaching USC?
Yeah, for sure, John. I mean, it's this is home. I pretty much grew up in San Diego. I went to the University of San Diego. What people don't understand is I've worked in LA, coaching the Lakers G League team. My first job out of college was with the LA Clippers. So this is actually my third time working in LA. And then also having spent time in Sacramento and in the Bay Area, California is home. Families out here, so it's always been something that I was hopeful that I would eventually get back here and coach, and it's a perfect spot for myself and my family.
Muss, you know that I married into the USC alumni base, so that means two things. You're going to hear a lot about USC football, and you're going to have a really high American Express bill every month. But beyond that, what has it been like for you from a challenge perspective to try to build the basketball program on a campus where one sport, football, has been the dominant sport for so long?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things of taking the job at USC, John, was the fact like I grew up a huge USC football fan
Right.
in San Diego, watching games on TV, and I actually went to the Coliseum when I was in junior high with a bunch of buddies. So I understood, that on our campus. Football is huge, and women's basketball has got unbelievable history here as well. So we are trying to do everything we can from a marketing standpoint in this market, whether if you're not the Lakers or the Dodgers, attendance, drawing fans, there's so much competition.
Right.
And I think our women's basketball team's a great example. When Juju Watkins is a part of the program and it's an LA star and she's a great player, how it can elevate your program. Other star players want to play with a player like that in a market like LA. And so that's what we're building and we're trying to aspire to do. And it does take time. I mean, it didn't happen in year one. We feel like year two, with the record that we have right now, that there's a step in the right direction. The crowds have gotten better this season than they were last year. And we need those to continue to grow once we hit Big Ten play.
Well, and that's the one thing that coaches always talk about. What separates the Big Ten from other conferences is when you go on the road to the Midwest, the fan support is second to none. How imperative for you to turn things at USC is building a great home court advantage at the Galen Center.
Well, John, it's for us to have success, we've got to create a home court advantage because we're already at a disadvantage, meaning UCLA and Washington and Oregon with our travel. I mean, I think we are in the holes to start the year 2 to 3 games just based on travel alone. Yeah. And so it's imperative for us to, we can't go to these other places and face sellouts and then come home and not have our own advantage when we do get to play in our building. So that's some of the things that we've just got to continue to market, continue to talk about. Because we know, like, when we go to, our first road trips, at Michigan State, at Minnesota, we're the only team in the Big Ten that has a 3-game road trip. So we're out for over 10 days, much like an NBA road trip. And we know what those buildings are going to be like. So creating a home court advantage is something that is a work in progress. And we're going to keep relentlessly trying to make that happen. But the only way that we're going to draw in LA is to win and win with star players.
What was it like to go through the Big Ten travel last year for the first time?
I mean, it was kind of like, coaching in the NBA to some degree. It's what we found though, what we learned, John, with student athletes, it's the game back, the home game back.
Right.
We just were so, lethargic against the University of Minnesota and Ohio State, the 2 games that we had at home after our long East Coast road trip. So we got to do a better job. We've got to figure out how to get our guys more rested, whether that means no practice at all when we come back and do just mental reps. But that's a work in progress for us for sure.
Well, let's talk about the team you're coaching now. How are you 10-1 with such major injuries across the board?
Yeah, great question, John, because I'm surprised at our record right now because when Alijah Arenas practiced 1 day with us, it was literally one practice, and he has not suited up yet, although his first practice will be this week. So we're super excited to get him back into practice mode starting this week, and we'll integrate him very, very slowly to make sure that he's fully healthy. But when we built the roster, our point guards were Alijah Arenas and Rodney Rice, and Rodney Rice has only played half of our games. and had a great assist to turnover ratio. I know there was a lot of people that wondered how the experiment would be moving Rodney from the off guard to the point guard position. He was phenomenal. High assist player, low turnover guy, and then a player averaging 20 points in the games that he has played for us. So we miss both of those guys at the point guard position. You lose two players in one position. That, not a lot of teams can overcome that. And then Amarion Dickerson, who is out for the year, was our best defender, one of our best shot blockers, and our highest energy guy. So those three guys, to have the record we have, a lot of guys have stepped up. A lot of guys are still learning and growing their roles. And then we hope to get, Elijah back once we get back off this Big Ten road trip, and get him back in uniform at some point, in January.
So you think mid-January could be a fair timetable for Alijah Arenas' return and college debut?
That's what we hope, John. We really do. We feel like sometime in the latter, from mid-January to late January, he'll be in uniform, fully cleared. Maybe a minutes restriction those first 3 or 4 games, but that is the hope of not only our coaches, but more importantly, that's the hope of Alijah.
Well, and Rodney Rice, as you referenced, prior to when you guys went out to Maui, was playing like an all-conference player in the Big Ten, scoring, distributing, running your team. What is a realistic timetable for when you'll get him back in the lineup?
Yeah, John, there's really no timetable because he's going to go get another opinion on his shoulder. And then the decision is really, do you rehab it or do you potentially need surgery? And so that is undetermined at this moment. And so we just want Rodney to make sure that he and his family gather as much information. Obviously, being in LA, there's so many great doctors and doctors that have dealt with NBA players. So he's going to get, the best medical advice that he possibly can. But as of today, we don't really know how it'll play out.
Well, with those two guys out, certain people have to shoulder more responsibility. And one of those players is Chad Baker-Mazara, who has had an incredible start to the year for you guys. Ever since you've obviously been a head coach in college, you have loved big guards, 6'5", 6'6", 6'7", who could pass, dribble, and shoot. Why is Chad Baker-Mazara a prototype for Eric Musselman's obviously favorite style of guard?
Well, we love guys that can draw free throws attempted, and Chad's done a great job of drawing free throws attempted. He's got the ability to see over the defense, so teams have now started to trap him in pick and rolls, and he's a great passer. I knew he was a good passer. I didn't know he was a great passer. I didn't know he was a willing passer. And then, every coach wants a guy when the shot clock is winding down or late game situations that someone can create for himself. Or can, create for teammates. And Chad has that ability. And then he's, he's made 2 unbelievable blocks late game too. And so, when you have a guard that can block shots and get deflections, that certainly helps your defense as well.
Muss, I know when you make the commitment when you're a young professional to be a coach, it's very taxing on your family. You move a lot. There's not a lot of stability early in your career. Having your son on the staff with you at USC and now at this part of your life, going through that with him every day, how rewarding has that part of the job been?
Super cool, John. I mean, I can kind of go back to I was an assistant coach for my father with the Timberwolves. And for me, that was the greatest experience I ever had, to be able to work with him on a daily basis. Michael now being with us at Nevada as a grad assistant, working his way up at Arkansas. I rely on him in so much. He's an incredible organizer, but we ride into work every single day. I pick him up and then I drop him off. And so that bonding experience, especially for a coach, I was, divorced from Michael's mom. And so I lost time. He lost time with me. So it's super cool. And then Matthew, my other son, was with us at Arkansas as a GA and with us at USC as a GA, and now is the youngest assistant coach in Division I at UC Riverside, working for Coach Argino. So super proud of both my sons, being in the basketball fraternity, and I got a beautiful daughter as well, Mariah.
No, it's a time of year too where family is obviously at the forefront, and I'm sure you're going to spend some time here, in the next weeks, spending time with family for the holidays. But how do you enjoy the holiday season next week when you know that the Big Ten is looming on the other side?
Well, we're going to go to San Diego and spend time with my mom in La Jolla. And so we will get away from it for 3 days. I don't know if like once the family goes to bed, I know we'll have tape going. And I don't really want to watch Michigan. I mean, what coach, what Coach May is doing right now, because they're not beating people, they're pummeling people. I mean, it's 30 points and 35. And I mean, it's the roster management that
Yeah.
Michigan's done, and then their X and O's is incredible. And then to think, 48 hours later, you got to go play at Michigan State and Coach Izzo. That's a tough way to start the Big Ten play, especially when you're, traveling on New Year's Eve but hopefully we get 3 good days off. We don't have to think about the Wolverines. And then
Yeah.
once we get back, we have 4 good practices before we head to Ann Arbor.
Moss, I'm always fascinated about how coaches hold on to tough losses more than they enjoy great wins. For you, I know you said there's obviously been euphoric wins in the NCAA tournament. Give me one win that has stood out for you in your career, regardless of level, and give me one tough loss.
I would say that a big win was, getting to the Sweet 16, beating Kansas. Obviously, Kansas, a blue blood. And on that team, we had 3 freshmen. And so we let those 3 freshmen grow throughout the season. We took some lumps in SEC play with the hope that once we got to the NCAA tournament, they would be able to perform at a high level. And so I would say just because we were so young that year, and then beating Kansas was really special. And I would say, the toughest loss is probably the loss to Baylor in the Elite Eight. They were a better team than us, but we were a couple stops away at one point from at least giving ourselves a chance. And in that game, our freshman leading scorer, Moses Moody, just did not have a good shooting night at all. And if he, if the defense doesn't focus on him and he gets hot, you never know what could happen. And those losses, you're always wondering about things like that.
And losses for coaches don't obviously stay just on the floor. It's also, translates to recruiting. Give me one recruit that you salivated for, either from high school or on the transfer market, that you didn't get.
Wow. I would say like one of the biggest shockers was Khalil Ware, just because we had done such a great job recruiting in state, and pretty much got and the University of Arkansas gets players based on the love of the hog, regardless
Yeah.
of who's coaching there. But I would say that when we spent a lot of time, and then I got a text that just said, "Hey, I never wanted to play at Arkansas," and I was like, "Well, daggone, I wish." I wish I would have known. Wish I would have known that 2 years ago, man. But that's probably the one that just stands out because we were, at a bunch of his AAU games and high school games, and because he played with Nick Smith, we kind of felt like maybe we could land him, and that's the one that got away in the state of Arkansas.
Muss, you've had multiple teams that have went far in the NCAA tournament. You've got a really long athletic roster. Other than getting healthy, what are the biggest long-term keys to USC making the NCAA tournament in 2026 and being a force to win a couple of games when it gets there?
Well, I think the biggest thing for us, John, is we can ill afford any more serious injuries. That for sure is number one. I mean, we're one player away. Even a sprained ankle for 2 weeks would devastate us. And then we need to continue to grow. I call it roster development, in-season roster development. We need our players to get better. Sometimes when you got just a veteran team and you're fully healthy, but this development of bringing guys along, we've changed our starting lineup so that we gain more experience. In-game experience is important. We've been starting Jerry Easter, Ryan Cornish. We've given him a couple starts now. leading up to our game this week. There probably will be another change or two in the starting lineup to get other guys experience. And then the big thing will be, how do we integrate, add a player as talented as Alijah Arenas? How do we blend that in the middle of the season? Because not a lot of teams in college add an additional player that talented, that can score it, pass it. But I do think his link with CBM at the guard spot makes us a very, very long team that should be able to get deflections defensively and rebound better defensively than we have so far.
Well, it's going to be a lot of fun to cover. Really appreciate a couple of minutes, Muss. Happy holidays to you and your family. And as always, look forward to staying connected along the way.
Thanks, John. Appreciate it. Tell your wife, fight on.
You got it. That's USC head coach Eric Musselman. I'm Jon Rothstein, and this is Inside College Basketball Now.